Looking for an executive car which you can drive without looking like your own chauffeur and which will have an interior looking slightly more modern than your grandfather's drinks cabinet? Forget about the Germans, because the Swedes have the hottest, despite the weather, premieres this year: Volvo S90 and V90.
This review actually started back in September last year with the S90, which broke down on the morning I was going to film it. Volvo claims the car drove off the lorry on its own and there was never any more problems with it. Probably the computer froze. But the towing man said this was not the first Volvo he towed in recent months, all with a similar problem. Computer showing batteries too low to start. Anyway, I took advantage of this mishap and switched my test drive for this V90. After all, this is what Volvos are all about: big estates. Volvo's first estate car was designed back in the 1950s. It was called the Duet and offered greater practicality. Later on, in the 1960s, there was the Amazon estate with a split tailgate. 1800 ES was an estate coupe, a shooting brake perhaps? And with the 850 estate, Volvo went racing. Volvo S90 debuted in Detroit in early 2016, followed by V90 in Geneva. Design is just like on the coupe concept shown in Frankfurt back in 2013, long bonnet, wide grille, headlamps with LEDs with what Volvo calls the Thor's hammer. And then this long-looking sideline. It's an optical illusion because the window line is rather high in relation to the roof. So when you look at the car profile, 3/4 front or 3/4 rear, V90 seems very long but at the same time very light. In fact, Volvo is about the size of the Mercedes-Benz E-Class. In the back, I'm not fan of the lights in the sedan, where designers clearly wanted something different from the triangle lights in the S80, and I think they've overdone it. But in the V90, the lights look great. From a distance, these chrome exhaust tips look business. You see them and you think this baby has a lot of oomph. But it's a 2-liter diesel.
Good thing and bad thing about Volvo's new scalable product architecture is that all engines are now 4-cylinder diesels and petrols. So under this beautiful long bonnet is a small motor, which looks ridiculous, but at least it's got 235 horsepower.
High window line, which I mentioned before, also impacts the interior. Behind the wheel you feel you're sitting very low. The dashboard is almost vertical, which only amplifies this feeling. Apparently we feel safer in cars designed like this because we are cocooned. I am cocooned in leather and aluminium. I feel this interior is better put together than in the XC90 I tested recently. 2 S90s I drove earlier had some unidentified noise coming from around the B-pillar, but this one is fine. Interior is much more modern than in the Mercedes-Benz E-Class. I feel it's also more modern than in an Audi. Infotainment system is like the one in XC90, so I won't bore you with the details. Just click the link on the screen, add XC90 review to your watch it later list, and now let's go for a drive. I also won't dwell upon the pilot assist system. Again, watch the XC90 review. Long story short, if this car sees lines on the road and a car in front, it will follow the car in front on straight roads around town and on motorways. It won't corner by itself, but it's good enough to take some load off the driver in traffic. Compared to the XC90, which was a 2016 model, in this 2017 V90, pilot assist also works at motorway speeds. And how's the car to drive by an actual human being?
Surprisingly good, actually. In Volvo XC90, I felt the engineers kind of encouraged me to use all the driver aids and to just let it go. And in V90, I feel like I want to be involved. I want to switch off all the driver aids, which, by the way, is not that easy because you have to click through and swipe through the Sensus Connect system. So after some time, I just don't bother, and I'm trying not to notice that the lane assist system does intervene every now and then when I try to cut a corner, and I found myself cutting corners quite often actually, because this car is really good to drive. It's got great suspension and great steering. Good job, Volvo.
This test V90 is on 20-inch alloys, but the suspension doesn't make any noises like the XC90 did. Okay, XC90 had adjustable air suspension, so maybe that wasn't cut out for Polish roads. In the V90, everything is nice and quiet.
Compared to Mercedes-Benz E-Class, Volvo V90 is actually quite engaging to drive, and I want to drive it fast. However, even though I tend to drive it a bit faster than I usually would, the car remains relatively fuel efficient. Relatively. I mean, Volvo promises something like 4 liters per 100 kilometers in extra urban cycle, which will be difficult, but you will get about 7.5 combined, as long as you keep away from the motorways.
The D4 sedan I drove earlier felt lively around town, but this 235 horsepower D5 is properly quick. It's partly due to the 8-speed automatic gearbox and partly due to the fact I didn't want to drive an eco. I hate the roller for switching between modes. I tried driving in sport mode, you don't really need it around town, and out of town it doesn't make that much of a difference. Just leave it in normal mode.
The 235 horsepower D5 diesel doesn't seem to run out of oomph at higher speeds, which was the case with 190 horsepower D4. By the way, this car will do 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 7.2 seconds.
Regardless of the speed, Volvo V90 is quiet and comfortable. About 700 kilometers road trip behind the wheel was a breeze, the brakes are effective, and so are the safety systems.
I'll go back to driving engagement once again. That's how good this car is. I keep on going about how engaging it is. In the V90, engineers managed to capture ideal proportions between comfort and driving dynamics. It's perfect, this car.
In tighter bands, Volvo V90 rolls a bit, but let's leave flat cornering to sport cars. 90% of the time, V90 is sufficient or better than you expect.
My only problem with Volvo V90 and S90 for that matter is related to visibility here around the A-pillars. The A-pillars are quite thick and the mirrors are quite big, so there are 2 big blind spots here in the front. So when you approach a junction, you have to look out. Also, this car is quite big, so parking it is not as easy as you would think.
It's actually lucky for Volvo the S90 broke down, and I won't show you how crappy the boot finish is. V90 is perfect in this department, even though 560 liters is 100 liters less than in a Mercedes-Benz E-Class or VW Passat variant. But you get your shopping bag hooks, anchor points, this neat system which prevents smaller items from rolling deeper inside the boot. In the back, seats are comfortable and space is generous, although the middle passenger has to deal with a big tunnel. But then Volvo V90 D5 comes with all-wheel drive, so the shaft has to go somewhere. Prices of Volvo V90 start at €42,500. This test D5 inscription model with options goes up to high 60s, low 70s.
Volvo V90 is beautiful and very comfortable. Unlike Audis, BMWs and Mercs, which evolve every couple of years, the Swedes introduce changes rarely, but when they do, they make them big. So if you're looking for a stylish car which looks like nothing else on the market, queue up for a Volvo.
And how do you like the new Volvo V90? Let me know in the comments below. Share, rate, subscribe. New episodes every Friday. Help me improve my videos by donating to Patreon or PayPal. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.